Sergeant David Reeves had learned to ignore the whispers. 23 years of service, and people still stared at the way his right leg dragged. He'd heard every joke, every muttered comment, every recruit who thought they were clever enough to mock under their breath. This morning was no different. The new class filed into the training yard. Fresh faces, clean uniforms, that dangerous combination of confidence and ignorance. He watched them notice, watched the smirks form, watched one particular kid, name tape reading Martinez, lean toward his buddy with that universal look of disrespect. Reeves kept walking, kept his face neutral, because they didn't know. They didn't know about the 17-hour firefight in the Korengal Valley. They didn't know about dragging Staff Sergeant Chen's body half a mile through a minefield. They didn't know that this limp was all that remained of a unit that once numbered 7 and now numbered 1. They'd learn, though. They always did. By the end of the week, Martinez wouldn't be laughing. He'd be standing at attention with tears in his eyes, finally understanding what it meant to survive when everyone you love doesn't. The question was, would the lesson come gently, or would Reeves have to break the kid down to build him back up? Either way, that limp was about to become the most important thing Martinez would ever see. The Georgia sun was already brutal at 0600, pressing down on Fort Benning like a hand on hot metal. Sergeant First Class David Reeves stood before 83 advanced infantry trainees, his clipboard tucked under one arm, his right leg locked at an angle that only someone paying close attention would notice. Wasn't quite natural. He was paying attention to them, too. Reeves had developed a skill over the years, the ability to read a formation like a book. He could spot the natural leaders within 30 seconds, the troublemakers within 60, and the ones who'd wash out before the end of week 2 with just a glance at their stance. His eyes moved across the ranks methodically. There, second row, fourth from the left, a kid holding his shoulders too rigid, compensating for lack of real confidence. There, back row, corner position, a woman with her weight distributed perfectly, former athlete, probably varsity something. And there, third row, dead center, a Hispanic kid with sharp features and sharper eyes, standing just casual enough to broadcast disrespect. Martinez. Reeves had read the roster last night. Private First Class Anthony Martinez, 22 years old, distinguished himself in basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, with high marks in weapons qualification and land navigation. Flagged twice for attitude issues, but nothing serious enough to derail his career. The kind of soldier who had talent but hadn't yet learned that talent without humility was just arrogance waiting to fail. "Good morning," Reeves said. His voice carried without being loud. Decades of command will do that. "I'm Sergeant First Class Reeves. For the next 12 weeks, I will be your primary combat instructor for advanced small unit tactics." He began to walk along the front of the formation. The limp was more pronounced when he moved. A hitch in his gait that made his right leg swing slightly outward before accepting his weight. 23 surgeries hadn't fixed it. The doctors said number 24 might help. Reeves had stopped counting. Behind him, he heard it. A soft snicker, quickly suppressed. He didn't turn around. Not yet. "Some of you are here because you requested advanced infantry training," he continued, his pace steady despite the uneven rhythm of his steps. "Some of you are here because your command thought you needed it. And some of you are here because you think you already know everything." Another step. The right leg dragged slightly, the sole of his boot scraping concrete for just a fraction of a second. This course has a 42% attrition rate. Reeves reached the end of the formation and turned, using the movement to sweep his gaze across every face. "That means roughly 35 of you will not graduate. You will fail because the standards here don't bend. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care about your potential. They care about one thing. Can you keep your team alive when everything goes wrong?" He started walking back, heading directly down the center aisle between the ranks. Trainees stood at rigid attention as he passed, but Reeves could feel the energy in the formation. That crackling tension between respect and judgment that always existed when a new instructor took command. Some of you are looking at me right now and wondering how a man who limps is qualified to teach you anything about infantry tactics. Dead silence. Even Martinez went still. Reeves stopped walking. He stood in the center of the formation, turning slowly so everyone could see him clearly. The gray-shot hair at his temples, the weathered face, the 7 rows of ribbons on his chest, and yes, that leg that didn't quite work right anymore. "That's a fair question," he said quietly. "Here's my answer. I'm qualified because I'm still here. I'm qualified because I made mistakes and lived long enough to learn from them. And I'm qualified because when the shooting started and my friends started dying, I figured out how to keep going." He let that sit for a moment. You'll either respect that by the end of this course or you'll wash out trying to prove you don't need to. Either way, the choice is yours. Reeves turned and walked back to the front of the formation, each uneven step echoing in the silence. When he reached his position, he picked up his clipboard. "First Sergeant Kowalski will take you through equipment issue. You have 30 minutes. Dismissed." The formation broke with a chorus of, "Yes, Sergeant!" and the organized chaos of 83 soldiers moving to their next task. Reeves watched them go, noting who moved with purpose and who wandered. His eyes tracked Martinez naturally. The kid was talking to his buddy again, both of them glancing back at him. They never change, do they? Reeves turned to find Master Sergeant Patricia Mills standing beside him, her own uniform crisp despite the heat. Mills ran the administrative side of the Advanced Infantry School, which meant she saw every evaluation, every complaint, every red flag that came through the program. "Who?" Reeves asked, though he knew exactly who she meant. "The ones who think they're already warriors." Mills nodded toward Martinez, who was now demonstrating something to a small group, probably imitating someone's walk, judging by the exaggerated limp he was performing. "That one's got talent, according to his file. Also got an ego the size of Texas. I've seen worse." "You've been worse," Mills said with a slight smile. She'd known Reeves for 15 years, since before Helmand Province, before the limp, before everything changed. "You remember when you first showed up to Ranger School thinking you were God's gift to the infantry?" Reeves felt the corner of his mouth twitch. "That was different." "How?" "I had the good sense to keep my mouth shut until I'd proven something." Mills laughed, a short bark of amusement. "You got smoked for 3 days straight because you gave your RIs a look that said you thought you knew better." "Don't rewrite history, Reeves." He watched Martinez's group disperse toward the equipment building. The kid moved like he was already special operations, that particular kind of confident stride that came from never having failed at anything important. "He'll learn," Reeves said quietly. "You gonna teach him gentle?" "I'm gonna teach him right. Whether that's gentle depends on him." Mills studied his face for a moment. "You okay running this cycle?" "Nobody would blame you if you wanted to take a staff position. You've earned it." "I'm good here." "David, I'm good here, Trish." He met her eyes. "This is what I do. It's what I'm still good at." She nodded slowly, understanding in her expression. Mills had been at his promotion ceremony 3 years ago when they'd pinned on his Sergeant First Class rank, and everyone had very carefully not mentioned that he'd probably never make Master Sergeant because the injury had taken him off any path to command. She'd also been at every one of his medical board reviews, sitting quietly in the back of the room while doctors debated whether he was still fit for duty. "All right," she said finally. "But if that leg starts giving you hell, I've got my medication schedule down to a science. I'm fine." "Sure you are." She clapped him once on the shoulder and headed toward the admin building. "Try not to destroy too many egos this cycle, yeah?" Reeves didn't answer. He was watching Martinez emerge from the equipment building, loaded down with gear, still talking animatedly with his buddy. The kid had no idea what the next 12 weeks would cost him. None of them ever did, but they learned. One way or another, they learned. By the end of day one, Martinez had decided the sergeant was overrated. "I'm just saying," he explained to his bunkmate, a quiet kid from Montana named Peters. "The guy's got a hell of a reputation for someone who can barely walk straight." They were in the barracks after evening chow, breaking down their newly issued equipment and prepping for the next day's land navigation exercise. Around them, the other trainees were doing the same, checking compass bearings, reviewing map symbols, the low hum of conversation filling the open bay. "Maybe that's why he's got a reputation," Peter suggested. He was methodical, laying out his gear in precise rows. "Overcame something." "Or maybe," Martinez said, stuffing his rucksack with less care, "the Army just needs instructors and he was available." "You see him walk? My abuela moves faster than that." A few nearby soldiers glanced over. One of them, a woman named Jackson with corporal stripes, shook her head slightly. "What?" Martinez challenged. "Nothing," Jackson said. "Just maybe know what you're talking about before you run your mouth. I know what I see. Guy's got a bum leg and a chest full of ribbons from doing whatever he did whenever he did it. That's great for him. But what's he going to teach us about modern combat when he can't even—" "Martinez." The voice came from the doorway. Staff Sergeant Willis, one of the assistant instructors, stood with his arms crossed. He was younger than Reeves, maybe 35, with the lean build of a marathon runner and eyes that missed nothing. "Yes, Staff Sergeant? You got something you want to say about Sergeant Reeves?" The barracks went quiet. Martinez felt the sudden weight of attention and made a split-second decision to double down. "Just making an observation, Staff Sergeant." No disrespect intended. "Uh-huh." Willis stepped into the barracks, his boots clicking on the polished floor. "Let me give you an observation, Martinez. That sergeant you're so eager to critique? He's forgotten more about infantry tactics than you'll learn in your entire career. He's trained 6 cycles through this school, and his graduates have the highest performance ratings in follow-on assignments. You know why?" Martinez said nothing. "Because he teaches you how to stay alive when shit goes wrong. Not how to be pretty on a parade ground. Not how to impress your buddies. How to make decisions under fire that keep your team breathing." Willis paused, letting that sink in. "You don't have to like him. You don't have to be his friend. But you will show respect, or you will find yourself recycled to another class. We clear? Crystal, Staff Sergeant." "Outstanding." Willis scanned the room. "All of you, land nav starts at 0430. Sergeant Reeves will be out there with you. I suggest you be at your best, because he'll be watching everything you do wrong so he can fix it before it gets you killed downrange. Get some sleep." He left without another word. The barracks stayed quiet for a moment, then slowly the conversation resumed. Martinez went back to his packing, his jaw tight. Peters watched him for a second. "You ever think maybe there's a reason everyone keeps defending him?" Peters asked quietly. "Everyone defends the old guard," Martinez muttered. "It's how it works. Doesn't mean they're right." But later, lying in his bunk waiting for lights out, Martinez found himself thinking about it anyway. The way Willis had talked about Reeves, not like he was defending a colleague, but like he was defending something bigger. The way Jackson had shaken her head, like she knew something he didn't. And the way Reeves himself had stood in front of the formation that morning, completely unbothered by their judgment, talking about keeping people alive when friends started dying. Martinez pushed the thoughts away. He'd had tough instructors before. This was no different. In 12 weeks, he'd graduate at the top of his class, prove he belonged here, and move on to bigger things. The sergeant with the limp was just another obstacle to overcome. He fell asleep believing that. He wouldn't believe it much longer. Day 2 started in darkness. 0430, Reeves had said, and 0430 it was. Martinez stumbled out of the barracks with his ruck, his weapon, and his land navigation kit, joining the cluster of shadows that represented his fellow trainees. The air was cool, almost pleasant. In another hour, it would be hellish again, but right now, the darkness felt like a small mercy. Reeves was already there. He stood beside a 5-ton truck, his silhouette unmistakable even in the pre-dawn gloom. That leg, locked at its particular angle. Those shoulders, squared despite everything. When he spoke, his voice carried across the assembly area without strain. Load up. We're moving to the range complex. 30-minute ride. I suggest you use it to wake up, because once we start, we don't stop for 12 hours. They climbed into the truck bed, settling into the bench seats with the peculiar silence of soldiers who are too tired to talk. Martinez ended up near the tailgate, next to Jackson and across from Peters. The truck lurched into motion and Fort Benning began to slide past them in shades of gray and darker gray. "Anyone know what we're doing today?" someone asked. "Land nav," another voice answered. 6-click course, 8 checkpoints, 4 hours to complete. "In this heat?" "Welcome to Georgia, Cherry." Martinez leaned his head back against the truck frame and closed his eyes. 6 kilometers wasn't far. He'd done the land nav course at basic with time to spare. This would be more of the same. Follow the azimuth, count your paces, find the checkpoint, move to the next one. Easy. The truck hit a pothole, jolting everyone awake. Up front, near the cab, Reeves was sitting on the wheel well. In the growing dawn light, Martinez could see him more clearly now. The weathered face, the gray in his hair, the way he sat with his bad leg extended slightly to keep weight off it. The sergeant was looking out at the passing landscape with an expression that was hard to read. Not tired, not bored, just watchful. "Sergeant Reeves," a trainee called out, "is it true you've run this course with every class?" "Yes." "All 6 kilometers?" "Yes." A pause. Someone, Martinez couldn't see who, asked the question everyone was thinking. "How do you manage that with—" The trainee trailed off, suddenly aware of how the question sounded. Reeves turned his head slightly, his eyes finding the speaker. "With my leg!" "I didn't mean—" "It's fine." "It's a reasonable question." Reeves shifted his weight. "I manage it the same way you'll manage it. One step at a time. Pain doesn't stop you from moving. Only you stop you from moving." Martinez opened his eyes. There was something in the way Reeves said it, not defensive, not inspirational, just matter of fact, that caught his attention. "What happened?" another voice asked. "To your leg, I mean, if you don't mind saying." The truck rumbled along. For a moment, Martinez thought Reeves wouldn't answer. Then, IED, Afghanistan, 2009, Helmand province. Simple, clean, no drama. "How long were you in country?" Jackson asked. "That deployment? 7 months?" "And you came back to train after that?" "Eventually." Reeves looked back out at the landscape. Took a while. The way he said it, took a while, somehow contained multitudes. Martinez found himself studying the sergeant's profile, seeing details he'd missed before. The way the ribbons on his chest weren't just for participation. The way his hands, resting on his knees, had scars across the knuckles. The way his eyes, when they swept across the trainees, held a weight that had nothing to do with age. The truck began to slow. "We're here," Reeves announced, standing carefully. "Draw your weapons from the arms room, get your checkpoint list, and move to your start points. You have 10 minutes. They piled out, suddenly all business. The range complex spread before them. Thousands of acres of Georgia pine forest, red clay trails, and terrain that looked deceptively simple, until you were in the middle of it trying to find a checkpoint the size of a fence post. Martinez collected his equipment and joined the line waiting for start point assignments. Ahead of him, he could see Reeves talking with Willis and 2 other assistant instructors, pointing at a map and tracing routes. Despite the early hour, despite the heat that was already building, despite that leg, the sergeant moved with purpose. Not fast, he'd never be fast again, but unstoppable. "Martinez!" Willis called out. "Your start point 7. Move out." He found his position, checked his map, and plotted his first azimuth. 8 checkpoints, 4 hours, 6 kilometers total. He'd done harder. The whistle blew. Martinez moved out, compass in hand, counting paces. The forest swallowed him within minutes. That particular kind of isolation that comes from being alone in dense terrain, with nothing but your navigation skills and your own judgment. It was one of the things he actually liked about land nav. Just you and the land. No politics, no personalities, just the mission. He found Checkpoint 1 easily. Checkpoint 2 took longer but wasn't bad. Checkpoint 3 wasn't where it was supposed to be. Martinez stood at what should have been the correct location, double-checking his pace count, his azimuth, his plotting. Everything said the checkpoint should be right here, but all he saw was empty forest. He expanded his search pattern, moving in careful circles. Nothing. Sweat was running down his back now. The sun had climbed above the trees, turning the forest into a steam room. He could feel time slipping away. Lost, Martinez? The voice came from behind him. Martinez spun to find Reeves standing 20 feet away, leaning slightly against a pine tree. The sergeant had somehow moved through the forest silently enough to appear without warning, despite that leg that should have made stealth impossible. "No, Sergeant," Martinez said automatically. "Just relocating the checkpoint." "Uh-huh." Reeves pushed off from the tree and walked closer. Up close, Martinez could see the strain in his face. The day was taking its toll on everyone, and the sergeant had probably been moving through this forest for hours already, checking on different trainees. But his voice was steady. "Show me your map." Martinez hesitated, then held it out. Reeves studied it for a moment, his finger tracing the route. "Your plotting's good," he said. "Your pace count's good. You know why you can't find the checkpoint?" "No, Sergeant." "Because you're navigating like this is flat land." Reeves pointed at the map's contour lines. "See this? You're on the side of a hill. When you walk 30 meters on a slope, you don't travel 30 meters across the ground. You travel less. The steeper the slope, the bigger the error." Martinez looked at the terrain around them with new eyes. The ground did slope now that he was paying attention. Not dramatically, but enough. "Always account for terrain," Reeves continued. "The map tells you where things are on paper. Your brain has to translate that to the real world. Checkpoint 3 is 40 meters that direction." He pointed downhill. "And Martinez?" "Yes, Sergeant. Stop trying to prove you're the fastest. Start trying to prove you're the smartest. Fast gets you lost. Smart gets you home." Reeves walked away, his limp somehow not slowing him down as he disappeared into the trees. Martinez stood there for a moment, holding his map, feeling something shift in his chest. The sergeant had just given him the answer, could have let him fail, could have made it a lesson about humility, but instead had taught him something real. He adjusted his route and found Checkpoint 3 exactly where Reeves said it would be. The day continued. By hour 8, Martinez was exhausted. By hour 10, he was questioning his life choices. By hour 12, when he finally stumbled across the finish line, he was ready to collapse. Reeves was there waiting. "How'd you do?" the sergeant asked. "Completed all checkpoints, Sergeant. Took longer than planned." "Time doesn't matter on day 2. Completion does. Good work." Martinez nodded, too tired to respond properly. Around him, other trainees were coming in. Some triumphant, some defeated, all of them running on fumes. "Get water," Reeves called out to the group. 15-minute break. Then we debrief." Martinez dropped his ruck and grabbed his canteen, drinking deeply. Beside him, Peters collapsed in the dirt. "That," Peters gasped, "sucked." "Yeah. You see Sergeant Reeves out there?" "Once. Checkpoint 3. He was at 5 when I went through, just standing there like he hadn't been walking all day." Peters shook his head in wonder. "The man's 50 if he's a day, got a leg held together with pins, and he's out navigating kids half his age." Martinez thought about that. Thought about the way Reeves had appeared without sound. Thought about the patience in his voice when he explained about terrain. Thought about that simple statement. "I manage it the same way you'll manage it, one step at a time." Yeah, Martinez said quietly. I guess he is. For the first time since arriving at Fort Benning, he wondered what else he didn't know about Sergeant First Class David Reeves. It was a question that would change everything. Week 1 became Week 2, and Martinez stopped counting the ways he'd been wrong. It started small. The realization that Reeves could read terrain like other people read books. The way he could spot a tactical error from 100 meters away and correct it with 3 words instead of 3 minutes of yelling. The fact that he never showed up late, never made excuses, never asked the trainees to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself, even when doing it clearly cost him. Especially when doing it clearly cost him. On day 9, during a patrol formations exercise, Martinez watched Reeves demonstrate proper spacing while moving through dense brush. The sergeant covered 50 meters of broken ground, that bad leg dragging through roots and rocks, never once complaining or slowing the lesson. When he finished, there was a fine sheen of sweat on his forehead, and Martinez noticed him adjust his stance in a way that suggested the pain was significant. But his voice remained steady. Questions. No one had questions. They were too busy trying to figure out how to move half as well as a man who couldn't walk straight. On day 12, during night operations training, Reeves sat with a small group around a red lens flashlight, teaching them to read terrain association in darkness. His hands moved across the map with absolute certainty, describing dead reckoning techniques that weren't in any manual Martinez had ever read. "Where'd you learn this stuff, Sergeant?" Jackson asked. "Downrange," Reeves said simply. "When the GPS went down and the radios went dead and all you had was a map and the stars." "Afghanistan?" "Mostly." "How many deployments?" another trainee asked. Reeves was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. 4 to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq, some other places we don't talk about. The way he said it, some other places we don't talk about, made Martinez wonder what those places were, what those missions had been, what it cost a man to spend that much time in war zones and come back still willing to serve. "That's a lot of time in combat," Jackson observed. "It's a lifetime." Reeves folded the map. "Most of the people I deployed with aren't doing this anymore. Some got out, some moved to different jobs, some—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The group sat in silence, the Georgia night pressing close around them. Somewhere in the distance, a barred owl called. Martinez found himself studying Reeves's profile in the red light. The lines around his eyes, the set of his jaw, the way he held himself like a man perpetually ready for something to go wrong. "Sergeant," Martinez heard himself ask, "your last deployment? Helmand Province. What happened?" Every trainee in the circle went still. Reeves looked at Martinez directly. In the red light, his eyes were unreadable. "We got hit," he said quietly. "That's what happened. But that's enough for tonight." Reeves stood carefully, using a nearby tree for support. "You've got movement drills at 0500, get some sleep." He walked away into the darkness, his limp somehow more pronounced in the shadows, and Martinez was left with the feeling that he just touched something he wasn't meant to see. Staff Sergeant Willis found Martinez during the next afternoon's weapon maintenance period. "Martinez, a word." They stepped away from the cleaning tables, into the shade of a pine tree that offered marginal relief from the heat. Willis pulled out a canteen, took a drink, and studied Martinez with the expression of a man deciding how much to say. "You asked Sergeant Reeves about Helmand?" Willis said finally. "Yes, Staff Sergeant. I didn't mean to. I'm not chewing you out. I'm giving you context." Willis took another drink. "You know why I'm an assistant instructor here instead of somewhere else?" Martinez shook his head. "Because 3 years ago I was a private in Sergeant Reeves's urban warfare class. Graduated, went to the 173rd Airborne, deployed to Kunar Province. Got into a situation, bad situation, the kind where people die. And I used what Reeves taught me to keep my team intact. All 8 of us came home." He paused, letting that sink in. When I rotated back to the States, I requested assignment here, specifically to work with him. You know how many instructors at this school made the same request? No, Staff Sergeant. 11. 11 NCOs who could be anywhere in the Army doing anything, who chose to be here because of that man. Willis pointed back toward the training area, where Reeves was working with another group. You want to know what happened in Helmand? That's not my story to tell, but I'll tell you this. What you see when you look at his leg, that's not his injury, that's his souvenir. His real injuries are the ones you can't see. Martinez felt something cold settle in his stomach. What do you mean? Willis studied him for a long moment. You ever wonder why he never talks about his unit? Why he changes the subject when anyone asks about that deployment? I figured it was classified or something. It's not classified. It's just heavy. Willis capped his canteen. 7 men went out on patrol that day. 1 came back. You do the math. The words hung in the air like smoke. 7 men went out. 1 came back. Jesus, Martinez whispered. Yeah. Willis turned to head back to the training area. So when you're tempted to make jokes about how he walks, maybe remember that he walks at all because he refused to quit while his friends were dying, and maybe show a little respect. He left Martinez standing there in the shade, trying to process what he'd just heard. 7 men, 1 survivor. That limp suddenly looked very different. The next morning, Martinez showed up 15 minutes early to formation. He wasn't the only one. Half the class was already there, standing in the pre-dawn darkness, waiting. Word had spread, not formally, but through that osmotic process by which information moves through military units. Everyone knew now, or at least they knew enough. When Reeves arrived, the formation snapped to attention with a precision they hadn't shown before. The sergeant paused, noticing the change. His eyes swept across them, reading the shift in energy. And for just a moment, something crossed his face. Not quite surprise, not quite gratitude. Something more complicated. At ease, he said quietly. The day's training was close quarters battle, room clearing, threat assessment, team coordination in confined spaces. Dangerous work, the kind where mistakes got punished immediately with simulation rounds that hurt like hell and lessons that stuck in your memory. Reeves moved through the shoot house with them, group by group, his commands sharp and precise. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Check your corners, watch your sectors, communicate. Martinez's team was 3rd through. He stacked up with Peters, Jackson, and a quiet kid named Ramirez, waiting for the go signal. His heart was hammering, not from fear, but from determination. He wanted to do this right. Wanted to prove he'd learned something. Execute, Reeves commanded. They flowed through the doorway, weapons up, each soldier covering their assigned sector. Martinez took left, cleared the corner, saw the target, engaged. 2 shots, center mass. The satisfying ping of hits. Keep moving. They flowed through the next room, then the next. Peters got hit once. His fault. He'd checked a door before confirming his 6, but recovered. Jackson moved like water, smooth and certain. Ramirez was slower, but methodical. Martinez felt it coming together. The training, the lessons, the endless repetitions. They weren't just 4 soldiers anymore. They were becoming a team. Clear. Time, Reeves called. He stepped into the shoot house, navigating the narrow hallways despite his leg. Not bad. Martinez, you rushed your target assessment in room 2. Could have been a hostage. Peters, you know what you did. Jackson, Ramirez, solid work. He pulled them aside for individual corrections, his teaching style becoming familiar now. Direct but not cruel. Demanding but not demeaning. Every critique came with a specific fix. Every mistake was treated as a learning opportunity rather than a failure of character. Run it again, he said. This time, slower. Speed comes from certainty, not rushing. They ran it 5 more times. By the last iteration, Martinez could feel the difference. The way they moved together, anticipated each other, functioned as something more than the sum of their parts. When they emerged from the final run, Reeves was standing with Willis, both of them reviewing notes. The sergeant looked up as they approached. "Better," he said. "Much better. That's what happens when you trust your training and trust each other." He paused. "That's how you come home." The last phrase, "that's how you come home," carried weight that had nothing to do with the exercise they'd just completed. Martinez found himself speaking before he could think. "Sergeant Reeves, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "How do you teach this?" "All of this?" Martinez gestured at the shoot house, the range, the entire complex. After what happened? How do you come back and keep teaching people to do the thing that—" He trailed off, not sure how to finish. Reeves looked at him for a long moment. Around them, the rest of the class was cycling through their runs, the sounds of simulated gunfire echoing across the range. "Because if I don't," Reeves said finally, "then they died for nothing." "My job isn't to keep you safe, Martinez. My job is to give you the skills to keep yourself safe, to give you the judgment to make good decisions under pressure, to teach you that the mission matters, but the team matters more." He shifted his weight, that unconscious adjustment to take pressure off his bad leg. 6 men died in Helmand because we made mistakes. Because I made mistakes. I can't bring them back. But I can make damn sure that the soldiers who graduate from this course don't make the same ones. That's why I'm here. That's why I do this. The honesty in his voice was staggering. No deflection, no minimizing. Just the raw truth of a man who'd survived and decided that survival had to mean something. "Sergeant," Martinez said quietly, "I'm sorry for judging you without knowing. You're not the first, won't be the last." Reeves almost smiled. "But you listened and you learned. That's what matters. Now get back in line. You're running it again." "Yes, Sergeant." As Martinez jogged back to his team, he felt something fundamental shift inside him. The man with the limp wasn't broken. He was a monument. He was proof that you could lose everything and still choose to stand up, still choose to serve, still choose to turn your pain into purpose. That leg wasn't a weakness. It was a testament. Act 3, beginning. The question no one asked. Week 4 arrived with unseasonable rain that turned the training areas into mud pits and made every movement twice as difficult. Reeves didn't cancel training. He never canceled training. "Weather doesn't care about your comfort," he told them as they stood in the downpour during morning formation. "The enemy doesn't check the forecast. You train in the conditions you'll fight in." So they trained in the rain. Patrol movements became exercises in not slipping. Radio communications became lessons in clarity despite interference. Weapon maintenance became crucial instead of routine. Through it all, Reeves was there, demonstrating, correcting, teaching. The rain darkened his uniform and plastered his hair to his head, and that leg must have been agony in the cold and wet. But he never stopped. Martinez found himself watching the sergeant more than he probably should, trying to understand, trying to reconcile the man he was learning about with the man he'd dismissed that first day. On the 4th day of rain, during a break in a hide-site construction exercise, Jackson sat down next to Martinez under a dripping poncho. "You've been different," she observed. "What do you mean?" "With Reeves. You watch him like you're trying to solve a puzzle." Martinez scraped mud off his boot. "Maybe I am." "What's the puzzle?" He was quiet for a moment, trying to articulate it. How does someone survive what he survived and not just break? How do you lose your whole team and still believe in the mission? How do you carry that kind of weight and still function? Jackson looked out at the rain, at Reeves, who was 30 meters away demonstrating proper camouflage netting to another group. "I don't think you do function. Not the way you did before. I think you learn to function differently, to carry it differently. That's what scares me, Martinez admitted. The idea that doing this job right means getting so hurt that you're never the same. Maybe, Jackson said, or maybe it means finding purpose in the hurt, turning the wound into wisdom. She stood, shouldering her weapon. Either way, he's proof you can survive it. That counts for something. She walked back to work, leaving Martinez with his thoughts and the sound of rain hammering against leaves. That night, after training secured and everyone had returned to the barracks to dry off and decompress, Martinez made a decision. He found Peters and Ramirez, the two soldiers he'd grown closest to during the course. "Help me with something," he said. "What?" "I want to know what actually happened in Helmand." Willis said 7 went out, 1 came back. But there has to be more to the story. There has to be a record somewhere. Peters frowned. Why dig into it? Seems like Sergeant Reeves doesn't want to talk about it. Because I need to understand. Because I mocked him without knowing anything, and now I need to know what I was really looking at. Martinez pulled out his phone. Military records are public after a certain point. After action reports, casualty lists, it's all documented. "Man, I don't know if this is a good idea," Ramirez said. "Probably not." "You in?" They looked at each other, then nodded. It took an hour of searching, cross-referencing unit designations and deployment dates, but they found it. A Department of Defense press release from September 2009. Brief, clinical, the way military announcements always were. The Department of Defense announced today the deaths of 6 soldiers who were supporting Operation Enduring Freedom. They died September 18, 2009, in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, when their patrol was attacked by enemy forces using improvised explosive devices and small arms fire. 6 names followed. Martinez read them slowly. Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, 29, of San Francisco, California. Sergeant First Class Anthony Delgado, 34, of Houston, Texas. Sergeant Marcus Williams, 26, of Detroit, Michigan. Specialist James Rodriguez, 23, of Phoenix, Arizona. Specialist 22-year-old Tyler Bennett of Nashville, Tennessee. Private First Class David Okonkwo, 20, of Baltimore, Maryland. 20 to 34 years old. 6 families destroyed. 6 futures erased. Jesus, Peters whispered. Martinez kept reading, looking for more details. He found a follow-up article from a military news site more detailed. The patrol from the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment was ambushed on a rural road in the Sangin district. Initial reports indicate multiple IEDs followed by a coordinated assault. One soldier, Sergeant First Class David Reeves, survived with severe injuries after remaining with wounded comrades under sustained enemy fire for approximately 17 hours before rescue forces could reach the position. 17 hours, the words blurred on the screen. Martinez tried to imagine it. 17 hours of fighting, bleeding, watching your friends die, knowing rescue might never come. 17 hours of making the choice to keep fighting instead of giving up. There's more, Ramirez said quietly. He'd pulled up another article on his own phone. Says here, Reeves was recommended for the Medal of Honor, but it got downgraded to a Silver Star. There's a quote from someone in his chain of command. Sergeant Reeves' actions under fire were nothing short of extraordinary. He single-handedly kept enemy forces at bay while treating wounded soldiers, and his refusal to leave his fallen comrades embodied the highest traditions of military service. The barracks had gone completely quiet. Other trainees, noticing something was happening, had gathered around. "There's video," someone said, "from the memorial service. They found it on a military tribute site. The footage was grainy, shot on someone's phone, but clear enough. A formation of soldiers in dress uniforms. A memorial display with 6 rifles, 6 pairs of boots, 6 helmets. And Reeves. Not the Reeves they knew. This Reeves was younger, thinner, moving on crutches. His right leg was in a full brace. His uniform hung slightly loose like he'd lost weight. When he stepped forward to place a flag beside one of the memorials, Chen's, Martinez noticed. His hands shook. The ceremony commander said something they couldn't hear. Reeves saluted. His face was blank, but his eyes looked like a man staring into an abyss. The video ended. No one in the barracks spoke. The weight of what they'd just seen, what they'd just learned, pressed down like a physical force. Martinez thought about that first day. The smirk, the jokes about Reeves's limp, the casual disrespect of a kid who thought he knew everything. He thought about Reeves walking through the forest during land navigation, standing in the rain, demonstrating techniques, patiently teaching them room clearing, despite the obvious pain it caused. 7 men went out. 1 came back, and the one who came back dedicated his life to making sure other soldiers learned to survive. "We need to tell him," Jackson said suddenly, "that we know, that we understand." "No," Martinez said. "We need to show him." "How?" Martinez thought about it, thought about what Reeves had said. "You don't have to like me. You don't have to be my friend. But you will show respect." They hadn't understood what they were being asked to respect. Now they did. "We be the best soldiers we can be," Martinez said. "We learn everything he teaches. We graduate this course and we use what he gave us to keep our teams alive downrange. We prove that what he survived meant something." Peters nodded slowly. Yeah. That's the only thing that matters." Around them, the other trainees murmured agreement. The energy in the barracks had shifted completely. They weren't just students anymore. They were inheritors of a legacy they were only beginning to understand. Somewhere outside, thunder rumbled. The rain continued to fall. And tomorrow, they would train harder than they'd ever trained before. The change didn't go unnoticed. By week 5, Reeves could feel the difference in the class. They moved with more purpose. They listened with more intensity. They pushed themselves without being pushed. Something had shifted, though he couldn't put his finger on exactly what. "They're good," Willis commented during an after-action review. "Better than good." Martinez's group ran the urban assault course this morning in record time, and I didn't see a single major error. "Martinez has come a long way," Reeves agreed. "He asked you anything recently?" "About Helmand?" Reeves glanced at Willis. "Not since that night during land nav." "Why?" "Just noticing things." Willis tapped his pen against his clipboard. "The way they look at you. It's different. More, I don't know, reverent, almost." "I don't want reverence. I want competence. Maybe they figured out you can have both." Reeves didn't respond. He'd noticed it too, the way Martinez no longer avoided eye contact, the way Jackson asked more thoughtful questions, the way the entire class seemed to approach training with a seriousness that went beyond just wanting to pass. It made him uneasy. He didn't teach to be admired. He taught to keep people alive. But he couldn't deny that something had changed. On the Friday of week 5, as the class was securing equipment after an exhausting day of advanced medical training, Martinez approached him. "Sergeant Reeves, can I speak with you?" "Privately? Walk with me." They headed away from the main training area toward the edge of the tree line where the noise faded. Reeves's leg was particularly bad today, too much kneeling during the medical demonstrations, and he didn't try to hide the limp. "What's on your mind, Martinez?" The young soldier was quiet for a moment, clearly trying to find the right words. "I wanted to apologize. Properly. For the first day, for the jokes, for not understanding what I was looking at." "You already apologized." "No, Sergeant. I apologized for judging you. I didn't apologize for being the kind of person who thought that was acceptable." Martinez stopped walking. "I've learned a lot in 5 weeks. About tactics and techniques and how to stay alive in combat. But the most important thing I learned is that respect isn't about agreeing with someone or thinking they're perfect. It's about recognizing what they've survived and what they're trying to teach you from that survival." Reeves turned to face him, The late afternoon sun slanted through the trees, painting everything in shades of gold. "You looked into it," Reeves said. It wasn't a question. Martinez nodded. "We all did. Not to pry, just to understand." "And now you understand?" "No, Sergeant." Martinez's voice was steady. "I understand the facts. 6 KIA, 1 survivor, 17 hours under fire. But I'll never understand what that actually means, what it costs, what it takes to survive that and then come back here and do this job every single day." He paused. "But I understand enough to know that every time I wanted to quit during this course, every time I thought it was too hard or too hot or too much, you were out there doing it too, despite having every reason to stop. And that means something. That teaches something that no manual can teach." Reeves looked at this young soldier, this kid who'd shown up 5 weeks ago with too much confidence and too little wisdom, and saw someone different now, someone who'd learned. "You want to know the truth, Martinez?" Reeves said quietly. "The truth is, some days I don't know how I do it either. Some days the pain is so bad I can barely stand. Some days I see their faces and I wonder why I survived when they didn't. Some days I think I'm teaching you all wrong, that I'm giving you false confidence that'll get you killed." He took a breath. "But then I see soldiers like you learning, growing, becoming the kind of leader who thinks before he acts and respects before he judges. And I think maybe, just maybe, this is how I keep them alive. By keeping you alive. By teaching you what they taught me." Martinez's eyes were bright. "They'd be proud of you, Sergeant." "I hope so." Reeves looked back toward the training area, where the rest of the class was finishing up. "I really hope so." They stood there for a moment in the fading light, instructor and student, survivor and inheritor, connected by threads of duty and sacrifice, and the determination to make loss mean something. "Get back to your platoon," Reeves said finally. "We've got Nightland Nav this weekend. It'll be harder than the day course." "Yes, Sergeant." Martinez saluted. A gesture of respect Reeves returned with equal gravity, and jogged back toward the barracks. Reeves watched him go, then looked down at his leg. The leg that had survived an IED blast. The leg that carried him through 17 hours of hell. The leg that proved every single day that you could be broken and still refuse to quit. "I'm still here," he thought. "They're not, but I'm still here. And that has to mean something." He turned and walked back to work, his limp as steady and certain as his purpose. The revelation was coming. But first, there was more to learn. Week 8 arrived with the kind of heat that made breathing feel like work. The class had been whittled down. 31 soldiers had dropped or been recycled, leaving 52 who'd proven they belonged. Martinez was among them, no longer the cocky kid who'd shown up in week 1. He'd become something else, something better. They all had. The curriculum had progressed to advanced tactical scenarios, multi-day operations in the field, sleep deprivation, decision-making under extreme stress. Reeves pushed them harder than ever, but they rose to meet it. They'd learned his teaching style, learned to anticipate his standards, learned that when he said good enough for garrison isn't good enough for combat, he meant every word. But something was building. Martinez felt it in the way Reeves had become quieter over the past few days, more distant. The way he'd stand at the edge of the training area, watching them with an expression that was hard to read. Not disappointed, not proud. Something more complicated. Next Friday, Willis announced during morning formation, there will be a special ceremony. Battalion commander will be attending. Dress uniforms required. Murmurs rippled through the formation. "What's it for?" someone asked. Willis glanced at Reeves, who stood off to the side, his face carefully neutral. "You'll find out Friday. Until then, we've got training to complete. Today's exercise is a 12-hour patrol with limited resupply. Fall out to your squad leaders." The week crawled by. The training was intense. They ran a hostage rescue scenario that went sideways, a vehicle ambush drill that exposed coordination gaps, a night infiltration that tested every skill they'd learned. Through it all, Reeves was there, teaching, correcting, pushing, but that distance remained. On Thursday night, Martinez found himself unable to sleep. The barracks was quiet except for the usual sounds. Someone snoring, another soldier shifting in their bunk, the hum of the air conditioning fighting a losing battle against Georgia heat. He got up, pulled on his PT uniform, and headed outside. The base was peaceful at 0200. Streetlights cast pools of amber light across empty roads. In the distance, he could hear the low rumble of generators and the occasional vehicle passing on the main thoroughfare. He wasn't the only one awake. Reeves sat on a bench outside the admin building, his bad leg stretched out in front of him, his face tilted up toward the stars. He didn't seem surprised when Martinez approached. "Can't sleep either?" Reeves asked. "No, Sergeant." "Sit." Martinez sat, leaving respectful distance between them. For a while, neither spoke. The Georgia night pressed close, humid and alive with cricket song. "Tomorrow's ceremony?" Martinez said finally. "It's about you, isn't it?" Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "It's about them. It's always about them. Your unit. My brothers." Reeves's voice was soft. "Tomorrow marks 16 years since Helmand. Battalion commander decided it was time to do something formal. Install a memorial plaque. Say some words. Make it official." Martinez processed that. 16 years. Reeves had been carrying this for 16 years, turning his survival into purpose, his pain into teaching. "Are you ready for it?" Martinez asked. "No." Reeves looked at him. "But you're never ready to talk about the worst day of your life in front of a crowd. You just do it because they deserve to be remembered." "What were they like? If you don't mind me asking." Reeves leaned back against the bench, his eyes returning to the stars. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory. Chen was the oldest, 39, 3 kids, married to his high school sweetheart. He was supposed to rotate home 2 weeks after we got hit. He had his bags packed and everything, kept showing us pictures of his daughter's upcoming birthday party. Martinez felt his throat tighten. Delgado was the joker. Could make anyone laugh, even in the worst situations. He'd do impressions of the platoon sergeant that were so accurate we'd be crying. Williams was quiet, steady, the kind of guy you wanted next to you when things went bad because he never panicked. Reeves's voice never wavered, but his hands, clasped loosely between his knees, had tightened. Rodriguez was engaged. Had the ring in his ruck. Was going to propose when he got home. Bennett could play guitar like he was born with one in his hands. Used to play for us at night, Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson. Okonkwo was the youngest, 20 years old, smart as hell. Was talking about going to college when his enlistment was up, wanted to be a teacher. Each name was a life. Each description was a universe of might-have-beens. "And then there was me," Reeves said quietly. "The one who lived." "You didn't just live, Sergeant. You fought for 17 hours. You kept fighting when anyone else would have quit. I kept fighting because they were still there. Because I couldn't leave them." Reeves looked down at his hands. "The IED got our vehicle. I was thrown clear. That's how this happened." He gestured to his leg. "The others were trapped. Rodriguez died instantly. Bennett maybe 30 seconds later. The rest took longer." His voice had gone flat, the way it does when someone is reciting facts to keep emotion at bay. Enemy forces moved in. We had no comms, no support, no extraction coming. Chen was hit in the first volley. Delgado held them off while I tried to stop the bleeding. Williams covered our right flank until he ran out of ammunition, then used his knife. "Okonkwo!" Reeves stopped. For the first time, his voice cracked slightly. Okonkwo was scared. He was 20 years old and bleeding out and scared. I held his hand. I told him he was going to be okay. I lied to a dying kid because I didn't know what else to do. The silence stretched. Martinez didn't trust himself to speak. By the time rescue arrived, I was the only one breathing. They medevaced me out, patched me up, sent me to Germany, then to Walter Reed. 12 surgeries before they even knew if I'd walk again. 23 total before they gave up trying to fix it completely. He shifted his leg, that unconscious gesture that spoke of chronic pain. Everyone said I was a hero. They gave me medals. They wrote articles. They said I'd saved lives by holding that position. But all I could think was, I couldn't save the 6 that mattered most. Martinez felt tears on his cheeks and didn't bother to hide them. "That's why I do this," Reeves continued. Every class that graduates, every soldier who learns what I teach and uses it to bring their team home, that's me keeping them alive. That's me proving their sacrifice meant something. Because if I can't bring them back, at least I can make sure other soldiers don't die the way they did. He looked at Martinez directly. So tomorrow, when they unveil that plaque and say nice things about my service, understand that I'm not the hero of that story. They are. I'm just the one who survived to tell it. Martinez wiped his face. Sergeant, permission to speak freely? Granted. You're wrong. You're not just the survivor. You're the one who took the worst day of your life and turned it into a mission. You're the one who wakes up every day despite the pain and the memories and the guilt, and you choose to serve. You teach us not just tactics, but what it means to carry responsibility for other people's lives. That's not just survival, that's heroism. Reeves studied him for a long moment. You've grown up a lot in 8 weeks, Martinez. I had a good teacher. They sat together in the darkness, instructor and student, survivor and inheritor, bound by understanding that transcended rank and age. Get some sleep, Reeves said finally. Tomorrow's going to be hard. For you, most of all. Yeah. Reeves stood carefully, using the bench for support. But I'll get through it. I always do. He walked away into the darkness, his limp as steady as ever, and Martinez sat alone with the weight of everything he'd just heard. Tomorrow, the class would understand. Tomorrow, everyone would understand. Tomorrow, that silence from the hook would return. Friday arrived clear and bright, the kind of morning that felt wrong for the gravity of what was coming. The ceremony was scheduled for 1,400 hours. By 1330, the entire training battalion had assembled. Over 400 soldiers in dress blues, standing in perfect formation on the parade ground. Behind the formation, family members and base personnel filled rows of chairs. A small stage had been erected, draped in red, white, and blue bunting. On an easel beside the stage, covered by a dark cloth, waited the memorial plaque. Martinez stood in his designated position, his uniform pressed to razor precision, his shoes gleaming in the sun. Around him, his classmates were equally immaculate. This wasn't just any ceremony. This was sacred. Reeves stood off to the side near the stage, also in dress blues. 7 rows of ribbons on his chest caught the light, the silver star prominent among them, along with 2 purple hearts, a bronze star with Valor device, and decorations that spoke of a career spent in harm's way. His uniform fit perfectly, tailored to accommodate his frame, but Martinez noticed the way he kept his weight on his good leg. The post commander called the formation to attention. A chaplain offered an invocation. Then Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, the battalion commander, stepped to the microphone. "We gather today," Morrison began, his voice amplified across the parade ground, "to honor sacrifice, to remember warriors who gave their lives in service to this nation, and to recognize one soldier who exemplifies the warrior ethos: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage." He paused, letting his words settle. 16 years ago this week, on September 18th, 2009, a patrol from 2nd Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment was conducting route clearance operations in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. At approximately 0900 local time, the patrol was struck by multiple improvised explosive devices, followed by a coordinated enemy assault. Martinez felt his spine stiffen. Around him, he could feel the entire class doing the same. 6 soldiers died that day. Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, Sergeant First Class Anthony Delgado, Sergeant Marcus Williams, Specialist James Rodriguez, Specialist Tyler Bennett, Private First Class David Okonkwo. Morrison read each name slowly, deliberately, giving weight to every syllable. As he spoke, an honor guard marched forward carrying a wreath of white flowers, placing it beside the covered plaque. One soldier survived. He was trapped in the kill zone for 17 hours with no communication, limited ammunition, and severe injuries. Despite his wounds, he provided security, administered first aid to his dying comrades, and held off enemy forces until rescue could arrive. His actions that day were extraordinary. His service since that day has been exemplary. Morrison turned toward Reeves. Sergeant First Class David Reeves, front and center. The formation held its breath as Reeves marched, not walked, marched, across the parade ground to the stage. That limp was impossible to hide now, but somehow it didn't diminish him. It elevated him. Every uneven step was a testament. He climbed the 3 stairs to the stage carefully, came to attention in front of Morrison, and saluted. "Many of you know Sergeant Reeves as an instructor," Morrison continued. "You know his reputation for excellence, his high standards, his unwavering commitment to training soldiers. What you may not know is why he does this. Why a man who could have taken a medical retirement, who could have moved to a desk job, who could have walked away from the pain of service, instead chose to come here and pour everything he has into preparing soldiers for combat." Morrison gestured to the covered plaque. "This memorial honors 6 warriors who didn't come home, but it also honors the man who carries their memory forward, who turns his survival into purpose, who teaches not from a manual but from the hardest lessons war can provide." He nodded to the honor guard. They pulled away the cloth. The plaque was bronze, mounted on dark granite. 6 names were engraved in elegant script, along with dates and ranks. Above the names, a simple inscription: "In memory of fallen warriors. Helmand Province, Afghanistan. September 18, 2009. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Below the names, a final line: "Their brother, SFC David Reeves, ensures their sacrifice is never forgotten." The silence was absolute. Martinez watched Reeves staring at the plaque, his face working through emotions that had no words. The sergeant stood perfectly still, but his shoulders shook once, twice, as he fought to maintain composure. Morrison continued speaking, but Martinez barely heard it. He was watching Reeves, watching this man who'd carried the weight of 6 deaths for 16 years, who'd turned his guilt into a mission, his pain into purpose. "Sergeant Reeves," Morrison said, "on behalf of a grateful nation and this command, we honor not just your actions that day, but your service every day since. These soldiers died as warriors. You live as one. Their legacy continues through every soldier you train, every life you save by teaching what you learned." He saluted. Reeves returned it, his hand trembling slightly. Then Morrison did something unexpected. He turned to the formation. "Advanced Infantry Course, Class 24-08, front and center." Martinez moved on instinct, his entire class flowing forward to form a line beside the stage. 52 soldiers standing at attention facing their instructor. "Class 24-08, Morrison said, "You have spent 8 weeks training under Sergeant Reeves. You have learned from his experience, his expertise, and his example. In 2 weeks, you will graduate and move on to your assignments. Some of you will deploy. All of you will lead soldiers in combat." He paused. "Sergeant Reeves cannot bring his brothers back, but through you, through what he's taught you, they continue to serve. You are their legacy. Your success honors their sacrifice. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." The response was thunderous, unified, carrying everything they'd learned and felt over 8 weeks. Morrison stepped back. "Sergeant Reeves, your class." Reeves turned to face them. 52 soldiers who'd come to understand what they were really learning here. His eyes moved across their faces, and Martinez saw him pause on Martinez himself, a moment of recognition and acknowledgement. When Reeves spoke, his voice was rough with emotion but steady. 8 weeks ago, you showed up here thinking you knew what you needed to know. Some of you," he almost smiled, "some of you thought you didn't need to be taught by a broken-down sergeant with a limp." A few soldiers shifted, but Reeves waved it off. "That's natural. I was the same way once. Cocky, confident, certain I had all the answers." His expression sobered. Then Afghanistan taught me otherwise, taught me that confidence without humility gets people killed, taught me that the warrior who thinks he knows everything is the warrior who doesn't come home. He gestured to the plaque behind him. These 6 men were my teachers. They taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite being terrified. They taught me that leadership isn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about putting your people first. They taught me that honor isn't a word in a manual. It's a choice you make when no one's watching and everything hurts, and giving up would be so much easier. His voice caught slightly. I teach you what they taught me. When I correct your room-clearing technique, that's Chen teaching. When I make you run that navigation course again, that's Williams teaching. When I tell you to trust your team, that's all 6 of them teaching through me. He looked down at his leg, then back up. This injury, it's not a weakness. It's a reminder. Every morning when I wake up and it hurts, I remember why I'm here. I remember 6 men who don't get to wake up. And I remember that I owe them more than just survival. I owe them purpose. I owe them meaning. The parade ground was so quiet that Martinez could hear his own heartbeat. So when you graduate, Reeves continued, when you lead your teams downrange, when you face your first real firefight and your training kicks in and you bring everyone home, that's not just you succeeding. That's them succeeding through you. That's their legacy living on. He straightened to full attention. In 2 weeks, you'll leave here. You'll deploy. Some of you will face what I faced. And when you do, I need you to remember this. Your people are worth fighting for. They're worth surviving for. They're worth coming home for. Don't be a hero. Be a leader. Keep your team alive. His eyes swept across the entire class one last time. That's what they taught me. That's what I'm teaching you. Honor them by living it. For 3 seconds, there was perfect silence. Then, without anyone calling for it, without any command being given, the entire class saluted. 52 soldiers standing at perfect attention, rendering honors not to a rank, but to a man, to a survivor, to a teacher, to a warrior who turned his worst day into a lifetime of service. Reeves returned the salute, his hand steady despite the tears running down his face. Martinez felt his own tears and didn't care. Around him, Jackson was crying openly. Peters had his jaw clenched tight. Even the hard cases, the ones who never showed emotion, stood with wet eyes and rigid spines. This was the silence from the hook. The silence that meant everything. This was reverence. The ceremony concluded with a 21-gun salute and the playing of taps. As the last note faded across the parade ground, the formation was dismissed, but no one moved quickly. Soldiers clustered in small groups, talking quietly. Some approached the memorial plaque, touching the names, reading the inscription. Martinez found himself standing in front of it, studying each name in turn. Chen, Delgado, Williams, Rodriguez, Bennett, Okonkwo, 6 lives, 6 families, 6 universes of what might have been. They'd like you, a voice said beside him. Martinez turned to find Reeves standing there, his uniform coat unbuttoned now, his posture less formal but no less powerful. Sir? My guys, they'd like you, like what you've become. Reeves looked at the plaque. Chen would appreciate how you listen before you act. Williams would respect your tactical mind. Okonkwo would probably try to get you to go to college. Martinez smiled despite himself. I wish I could have known them. You do know them. Everything I taught you, they taught me. Reeves reached out, touching Chen's name briefly. That's how it works. Knowledge gets passed down. Experience becomes wisdom, becomes teaching, becomes legacy. Are you okay? Martinez asked. After all that, Reeves considered the question. I'm never okay on this day. September 18th never gets easier, but having this, he gestured to the plaque. Having them honored publicly, having you and your class understand why I do this, that helps. That makes the weight feel less heavy. Other classmates were approaching now, standing quietly nearby. Jackson, Peters, Ramirez, others. All of them drawn to this moment, this place, this understanding of what they'd been learning. "Sergeant Reeves," Jackson said quietly, "thank you. For everything you've taught us, for everything you've given us. You don't have to thank me. Just use it. Keep your teams alive. Come home." He looked at each of them. "That's all the thanks I need." They stood together in front of the memorial as the sun began its descent toward evening. Instructor and students, survivor and inheritors, connected by threads of sacrifice and service and the determination to make loss mean something. 2 weeks later, Martinez stood in his dress blues one final time at Fort Benning. Graduation day. 52 soldiers had started week 1. 52 were graduating, a perfect completion rate that Morrison had noted was unprecedented for Reeves's courses. "You pushed them hard," Morrison had said during the pre-ceremony brief. "But not one quit. Not one failed. That's remarkable." Reeves had simply nodded. They were ready to be pushed. They just needed to know why. Now, as the graduates stood in formation for the final time, Reeves walked along the ranks. He stopped at each soldier, shaking hands, offering brief words of advice or encouragement. When he reached Martinez, he extended his hand. "You did good, soldier. Really good." Martinez gripped the hand firmly. "You made me better, Sergeant. Made all of us better. You made yourselves better. I just showed you how." Reeves held his gaze. "Remember what I said. Keep your team alive. That's the mission. Always." "I won't forget." Martinez paused. "And, Sergeant, when I'm old and gray and some cocky kid shows up thinking he knows everything, I'll teach him what you taught me. I'll pass it forward." Reeves smiled, genuinely smiled, and it transformed his face. "That's how we keep them alive. That's how we honor them." He moved on down the line, leaving Martinez standing at attention with a lump in his throat and a sense of purpose that went bone deep. 3 months later, Martinez was in Afghanistan, his first patrol, his first time outside the wire. His team of 4 moved through a village on the outskirts of Kandahar, providing security for a meeting between local elders and the battalion commander. Everything Reeves had taught him clicked into place. The way to read terrain, the way to maintain spacing, the way to watch for telltales that something was wrong. And when the shooting started, Taliban fighters opening up from a rooftop 50 meters away, Martinez didn't freeze. He moved. "Contact right, Jackson. Suppress. Peters, find cover. Ramirez, call it in." His team flowed like water, exactly as they'd been trained. Jackson's weapon barked, forcing the enemy to duck. Peters moved to a wall, providing flanking coverage. Ramirez was on the radio, his voice calm despite the chaos. "All elements, we've got 2 enemy combatants, rooftop position, engaging now." Martinez assessed, decided, acted. "Peters, grenade that position. Jackson, on my mark, we move to that wall. Ready. Move." They executed perfectly. Peters' grenade forced the enemy from their position. Jackson and Martinez covered the distance in seconds. Within 90 seconds of the first shot, the threat was neutralized and the team was secure. No casualties, no injuries. Everyone came home. That night, after the patrol debrief, after the adrenaline faded and the reality settled in, Martinez sat alone in his hooch and wrote a letter. Not an email. A real letter, pen on paper, the way his grandfather had taught him. "Dear Sergeant Reeves, today I had my first firefight. My team engaged enemy combatants, and we all came home safe. I'm writing to tell you that everything you taught us worked. The spacing, the communication, the decision-making under pressure, all of it clicked exactly the way you said it would. But more than that, I understood today why you do what you do. I understood what it means to be responsible for other people's lives. To make decisions that might get them killed if you're wrong. To carry that weight and still function. When the shooting started, I heard your voice in my head. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Assess, decide, act. Trust your training and trust your team. I did. And we're all still here. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for turning your survival into my preparation. Thank you for carrying what you carry so that we don't have to learn the hardest lessons the way you did. I'll keep my team alive. I promise you that. And when I'm done here, when I rotate home, maybe I'll come back to Fort Benning. Maybe I'll teach what you taught me. Maybe I'll pass it forward to the next generation. Because that's how we honor them. That's how we keep Chen, Delgado, Williams, Rodriguez, Bennett, and Okonkwo alive. Through us. Through what we learned from you. Through what we'll teach to others. Your student, Staff Sergeant Anthony Martinez, he sealed the letter, addressed it, and added it to the outgoing mail. He'd never see the response written in Reeves's careful handwriting 3 weeks later. Martinez, your letter arrived this morning. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I walked to the memorial plaque and I read them the important parts. You did what you were supposed to do. You kept your team alive. That's the mission. That's always the mission. I'm proud of you. Not because you didn't freeze, not because you executed well, but because you understood. You understood what I was really teaching. You understood the weight and the responsibility and the sacred duty of leadership. Come back safe. Bring your team home. And yes, when you're ready, there's a place for you at Fort Benning. There's always a place for soldiers who want to teach what they've learned. That's how we keep them alive. Stay safe out there. SFC, David Reeves, P.S. You owe me 20 push-ups for calling me sir in your letter. Sergeants work for a living. 5 years later, on a crisp September morning at Fort Benning, a new class of advanced infantry students filed into the training yard. Fresh faces, clean uniforms. That dangerous combination of confidence and ignorance. Standing at the front of the formation were 2 instructors. One was older, grayer, his limp more pronounced than it had been 5 years ago, but his bearing still perfect. The other was younger, a newly promoted sergeant first class with sharp eyes and a patient demeanor. "Good morning," Reeves said, his voice carrying across the formation. "I'm Sergeant First Class Reeves. This is Sergeant First Class Martinez. For the next 12 weeks, we will be your combat instructors." He paused, his eyes sweeping across the new faces. "Some of you are already judging, wondering how we can teach you anything, wondering what 2 old guys with ribbons and stories can possibly show you that's relevant." Martinez smiled slightly. He'd heard this speech before, from the other side. "That's fine," Reeves continued. "You'll learn. They always do." In the back row, a young soldier whispered something to his buddy, both of them glancing at Reeves's leg. Martinez saw it. So did Reeves, but neither reacted. And on the parade ground, Sergeant First Class David Reeves began to walk, his uneven gait marking time like a metronome, each step a testament to what it means to refuse to quit. His student walked beside him now. The legacy continued. The mission remained the same. Keep them alive. Bring them home. Teach them what matters. Honor the fallen by saving the living. That was the mission. That would always be the mission.